Brandon is just standing there because he didn't expect to get played dirty like that. He didn't expect for people not to play by the rules, because that's what they do in jiu-jitsu. That's what they do in boxing. That's controlled fighting. That's not real fighting. This is why Suspect is the ultimate winner here. You should have expected for something like that, and at least you learned your lesson now. At least I hope you did. I know everyone's already covered this already, but everyone is saying the same thing. Oh, Almighty Suspect, he shouldn't have did that. Man, that's funny. We're going to be talking about the lessons we can actually learn from each of these characters. And there are a lot of lessons to learn. We're going to be talking about manliness, exploitation, and fairness. 1 month ago, they did a podcast together. This podcast right here. And long story short, they're talking about different things, and Brandon accuses Almighty Suspect of saying the N-word with a hard ER. And basically Suspect sort of crashes out and he starts going off on Brandon. And we're going to play a little bit of that
I said,
nigga, you slurred your speech.
That ain't what I said.
And then you went into a whole rant about whatever
though.
you're talking about.
That ain't what I said.
You said a hard ER. I heard it. My ears work fine. You did.
You imagine
this nigga right here, this light-skinned nigga right here, this high yellow nigga right here. Said a hard ER. That's what happened.
Guys,
we are live.
I ain't mixed with nothing.
I'm showing you this because this is from 1 month ago. So this is basically the catalyst to all of the tension that led up to the Almighty Suspect crash out that happened a couple hours ago. And we're going to be getting into the lessons right now. Brandon is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's a trained fighter. And at this point, Suspect doesn't really know that, but I think that he believes there's something up about this guy.
He's not trying to fight.
Where would you like to go?
Where are you trying to
Where would you like to go?
So he says, where would you like to go? You trying to go outside? And this is where the first lesson is going to come in.
Fine. Don't go outside. Sit down.
Almighty Suspect goes to the door. He said, all right, let's go outside. Lesson number 1. If someone's acting big and bad and you suspect that they want to attack you and they're telling you, let's go outside and do this, let's go out there, let's go to the bathroom, you never follow them because you don't know what advantage they have on the outside of that wall. All you know is, okay, the tension's pretty high right now, and if they're really getting up and they're standing up to you, you're going to want to be the one to make the first move. If the person already demonstrates that he wants to fight with you and he wants to go outside, don't let him leave that door. Don't play into that. You're playing into the game. You're going to give him the advantage once you say, all right, let's go outside then. That's a possibility. So if you are going to fight him, which you should fight someone if they're disrespecting you like this and basically, saying all these fighting words to you, you need to fight them right then and there. None of this go outside, go to the bathroom, none of that. You do it right then and right there. Or else guess what? If you don't and you stay sitting there like that, that makes you a mark.
Sit down.
Come on.
Sit down.
Follow me.
Sit down, bro.
All that follow me stuff, nah. You don't want to let the aggressor leave outside of the door because then you give him the upper hand. Then you're playing by his rules. Okay, so now we're in the present day. That old clip, that's a month old. So now you got to see the tension play out. So a couple hours ago, they did a stream, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware about already. And things got heated. Almighty Suspect and Brandon were exchanging insults the whole time, basically, sort of sprinkled in with a little bit of hip hop news.
If it took for you to not act like a hyper emotional beta male child, if that was
big white man,
if that was you, I would prefer that than what you do.
But you love using they big ass gay words.
I guess using big words is white now.
Them white man gay ass words.
I guess using big words is.
So he's calling Suspect emotional and this and that the whole time. And Suspect's basically just calling him fat, gay, and feminine the whole time. So now we're 3.5 hours into the stream. Things are really heated and really escalated. And, Brandon basically is bringing up, I know who you're scared of. And he brings up one of Almighty Suspect's ops. And Almighty Suspect really doesn't like this. Obviously, he doesn't really have any respect for Brandon. And the dude's just irritating him the whole time. So he's going to get to the point where he says, man, I think I even would beat you up. And at this point, Almighty Suspect knows his vulnerability in this situation, which is he's not a trained fighter. And Brandon is a trained jiu-jitsu guy.
You have a lot of cool points in the streets of LA.
A nigga beat you up.
He probably would.
No, me. A nigga beat you up.
You will beat me up?
Yes,
You can't beat me up.
Stop bringing up
You
other
can't
niggas
beat me
who
up.
in jail. Nigga,
You really think you could beat me up?
Nigga beat you up.
No, you can't.
Fuck you mean?
No,
Nigga
you
didn't
can't.
me outside.
I'm gonna be.
All right, so keep in mind, Almighty Suspect said again, well, you can see me outside if you don't think I could beat you up. And at this point, he already knows his vulnerability, that he can't really fight hand to hand. He can't really go against Brandon like that. And he's aware of this at this point. So in order for Suspect to win, there needs to be no cameras, and there really needs to be no security to hold him back, because he has the blade. If you can't go against someone hand to hand, of course you're gonna get an equalizer if you're any kind of street smart or any kind of combat smart. But Brandon doesn't have the. I mean, he's from Long Beach. He's from the streets, I guess, but he just seems so unaware of his surroundings, unaware of the possibility that people have equalizers in the world, and you need to be prepared for that. So it's really a poor reflection on his intellect here. This is the part we're gonna want to see right here. 3 hours and 39 minutes. They've been talking shit. They've been going back and forth. They've been alluding to the idea that if they got in a fight, Brandon would win, or Almighty Suspect would win. And this is where we're going to get into our lesson on exploitation and fairness. If you're any kind of street smart, if you've been in any kind of fights, if you've lived in any kind of gutter, then you should know that out on the streets, there are no rules. There are no rules to fights. And I think Brandon doesn't realize this because he's a black belt. He fights too much on the mat. He spars with people. He doesn't really get in real fights. So he doesn't realize the severity of what he's doing, of what could happen to him. You could get stabbed up. You could get pieced up. You could get swung on with the bat. You could get jumped. And Brandon just doesn't seem to realize this. Almighty Suspect understands that he's vulnerable in the sense that he can't go hand to hand with no piece, no weapon against Brandon, because Brandon's trained, obviously. So he recognizes this vulnerability, which is why he says, well, if you want to see me, go outside, because that's where there's going to be really no cameras, and that's where he's going to be able to have the upper hand with an equalizer. Brandon doesn't realize this yet.
This is a fact. I'm going to say what I want to say. I call this nigga Antoine Dotson a bitch and everything else. I'm still going to come to no jumper. I'm going to walk in and out this bitch. If a nigga want to do something, there's nothing but space and opportunity. Ain't worried about a light-skinned nigga, no nigga, period. So if a nigga's that gay, he's always bringing up fighting. You can't get a nigga bringing up fighting and then try to put it on another nigga to do something. So, but I just called you one. I just called you.
He said, I just called you one. You know that bitch word is a trigger word, especially for someone like Almighty Suspect. You should be able to use your intellect to know that people aren't going to play fair. Almighty Suspect is leveraging your vulnerability of having been vetted for weapons. You don't have any weapons on you because they vetted you for it before you went into the office. Almighty Suspect has that advantage because, well, he's at the home base. He can get around that situation. So you don't do all this bitch stuff and expect not to get played dirty like this, especially by someone like Almighty Suspect. You're expecting a fair fight. You know, I'm going to say this and that and get away with it because we're in a controlled environment. But you're never in a controlled environment, and you should never expect that.
Just like you are a bitch. Guys.
You see where you fucked up even more right off the bat. Almighty Suspect stands up to you. Never let a man stand up to you or get in your face like that. As soon as he said, oh, you want to call me a bitch? You should have been the one to stand up first. But as we can see, he doesn't really, Brandon doesn't really look like he's in fighting shape. And yeah, hand to hand, he can go against me, Almighty, anyone in there and, beat their asses. But you're not on home base. You don't expect for people to exploit your vulnerabilities, that of not having a weapon. Being behind a mic, those are your weaknesses. See, so he just sits there, and of course, Almighty Suspect had already stood up. Anyone with a little bit of common sense understands that he's gonna do something to you. Yeah, they have the security there, but do you really expect the security to be on your side? And when Almighty Suspect stands up like that, do you think if he lets something off on you, and you try to do something back, the security's not gonna hold you back? You need to understand your weaknesses, and you need to be prepared for them.
Guys, come on.
So the camera goes black because, they're not going to film this, obviously. And Almighty Suspect was already expecting and preparing for this sort of throughout the show. That's why he's saying, Man, you want to fight me? If you want to fight me, like, do that, do it, whatever. And Brandon thinks it's a game. He thinks he's in a controlled environment. He thinks motherfuckers aren't gonna play dirty. No, that's not what you're gonna want to do. You never want to think like that. And Almighty Suspect had the upper hand here because he played it out like Batman. He had prep time and he was able to think out his moves, and he exploited the fact that you expect to play nice. You expect for people to play nice. That's what someone like Brandon's thinking. That's what's going through his head.
Hey, y'all tripping, bro.
Come do something.
So of course, Almighty Suspect, he has that equalizer on him now, and he already showed it off. So he says, "All right, come do something if you're gonna want to do something." Brandon is just standing there because he didn't expect to get played dirty like that. He didn't expect for people not to play by the rules, because that's what they do in jiu-jitsu. That's what they do in boxing. That's controlled fighting. That's not real fighting. This is why Suspect is the ultimate winner here. No matter what you guys say, you should have expected for something like that, and at least you learned your lesson now. At least I hope you did. Yeah, it sucks that had to happen to Brandon. It sucks that it's not fair, but that's life. You're never gonna be in a fair fight, and you should never expect that. So now he's just standing there.
This why y'all have security, man.
Because he's afraid of Suspect's weapon. He doesn't want any of that.
The man brought a knife to
come do something.
No, there's no weapons. No weapons. No weapons.
And that is the face of defeat. He's like, but you brought a knife, man. But never expect for people to be playing fair with you like that. And you should have already sort of suspected something when Suspect is talking all that. Okay, well, let's try something then. Try something. And even in this case, even if you do find yourself in a situation like this, you never let a man spit on you like that. Brandon, you have about 200 pounds on Almighty Suspect. In my situation, in my case, what I would hope for a lot of you, if I got to get shanked up a little bit, I'm going to at least take you down with me. And we're going to settle it like that. If I got to get severely cut up from the situation, you got to get rushed. You're a jiu-jitsu guy. You could have, yeah, okay, you could probably get stabbed up a little bit. But still, you got to do something about that. Rush the motherfucker, pick his ass up. You're going to get stabbed a little bit, whatever. Break his, do whatever the jiu-jitsu people do. But you were expecting a clean fight, and that's your problem. He walks away. Brandon walks away. And it's really a pity because people are never going to play fair with you, man. And if you have any kind of intellect, you should already know this. So, yes, you were defeated in this case. But did you learn anything from it? Because when Almighty stood up, you had your chance to take his ass down and do something before the security could jump in and before he could pull his knife out and sort of like restrain his arms if you wanted to, because you're a lot bigger than him. So there were a couple things you could have did, but you sat there behind the mic in the vulnerable position and let all that happen to you. And now you just walked out like that. Let me know what you guys thought about the video.